Okay. So we got to see my intro slide, and so this is the intro to the talk. I'm giving this talk in memory of Patrick K. Lynch. He came to visit Mass General, a few months before he passed, and he loved the anesthesia modality. And so this is for you, Pat. So disclosures and acknowledgements. This talk is about anesthesia. Please don't fall asleep in class. The background and work history. Oh, that's my overview. So acknowledgements. Here you go. Special thanks to my leaders. My boss wanted me to say my talk, everything I say is my own opinion and does not represent the views of my employer, blah, 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 blah. There you go, Bill. So this is in service training. I'm not being paid for this presentation unless you consider all the wonderful food the hotel has fed us and all the good trinkets we've got from the vendors. I don't have any conflicting interests. Draeger, stable at 22. I'm a proponent of right to repair, repair.org, ECRI. Special acknowledgement to Jose Miranda Rivas and Jim Phillip, my mentors in the business here. Thank you to MD Expo, Kristen Lavoie for having me here, and many, many thanks to North American Draeger and Derek Norcross for shipping this thing in here. Unbelievable, can you believe that? That's the Apollo. So just my quick bio, I was a bike mechanic. I was supposed to be in the Army, but that happened and made me a biomed, knocked me right into my biomed career. Lab equipment, I started with a lab equipment company building wires and cables, and here I am all those years later. I was ended up as a service manager for a lab company, Flame Photometer, if anyone ever remembers that. 19 years in a community hospital, one-man show. My boss said to me, he hired me after talking to me about sailboat racing and tactics for 2 hours and then said, how soon can you start? And read this book, do everything it says, because these people called the JCO are going to be here in like 3 months and I need you to have a program up and running for me. So I did that and passed, and 3 more JCOs later. Then Mass General, I landed there. It'll be 15 years in February, and I was hired to staff up a new building. One of the most amazing jobs in biomed, doing anesthesia system support where anesthesia was invented. When you walk through those halls, you feel the ghosts of the progenitors of medical practice and technology. It's just amazing, amazing place. So it's a world-class organization. Our cast and crew come from all the continents. My leadership team, Bill Driscoll, once upon a time vice president of the Medical Device Society, who was the predecessor back in the day. We have some great team leaders, some UConn folks. Go UConn. A good crop of biomeds from all around the world. So we have like 60 something ORs depending on the state of renovations, closures, blah, 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 remote anesthetizing locations. Every little nook and cranny an anesthesiologist can wiggle into, they'll drag a machine in and do a case there. It's crazy, some of the places you got to get into. Cath labs, oh, yuck. 120 anesthesia machines, 60 something Draeger Apollos, 54 Tiros, a bunch of MRI machines. Anesthesia is what makes modern surgery possible. Before anesthesia, they would like strap you to a table and like just cut pieces and parts off you. And if you passed out from screaming and then survived the blood loss and the trauma, that was a good case for the surgeon. History of anesthesia, like I said, they quote invented anesthesia at Mass General. If you want to take a note, look for a Nova documentary called Strange Sleep and watch it and you'll get the whole story. It's amazing, amazing to watch. was in 1972 that was produced, and you'll see some amazing views of what medicine in the OR looked like back in the day. This is a picture that's in the Ether Dome where I work, where they did this actual procedure, and that's a picture of the first anesthesia machine. This is a picture of today's anesthesia machine. I'll do the Vanna White. So what is anesthesia? You know, read along with the slide a little bit, but it is the absence of pain. Without it, you know, people would scream a lot on the table. It wouldn't be much fun to work in the OR. How does anesthesia work? So as technology people, what I would tell you is if your hospital's IT systems were a brain and the IT functioning of your hospital was consciousness, if you went down to the server room and started pulling all the patch panels and cables out and your network shut down and all your computers didn't work, that's kind of the way anesthesia affects the neural pathways in the brain. So Patrick Purdon, he was explaining how the anesthesia drugs work in the brain, and the different sections of the brain are like playing music to each other, and that's what consciousness is. And he's a jazz musician, and he was one of the developers of the SED line and the bispectral index. And there he is showing the different EEG responses to different anesthesia agents. Ketamine, dexmedetomidine, propofol, these are the hypnotics that they use to extinguish your consciousness before they proceed to the next elements of anesthesia. How is anesthesia delivered? Well, by vaporizer. The sevoflurane will vaporize. The fresh gas circuit passes through the vaporizer, through the circuit, down the ET tube, into the lungs, and you breathe, and the anesthesia agent sevoflurane diffuses into the bloodstream, and when the molecular concentration reaches a high enough level, crosses the blood-brain barrier and starts to infuse the neural works in your head. You start to go to sleep and become anesthetized. So modes of anesthesia. General anesthesia, they're using the full-on anesthesia machine, the tube down your throat, the agent flowing, drugs going in, the paralytics. So you have the hypnotics, the propofol, you have the paralytics, the rocuronium, the vercuronium, succinylcholine. Then you have the opiates, you know, fentanyl, remifentanil. And the reason that they use a cocktail like that, it's not just enough to extinguish your consciousness, but your autonomic nervous system still is functioning. So they give you the paralytics to make all your muscles freeze, your diaphragm freezes. That's why the ventilator has to breathe for you. And then they give you the opiates to deaden all the pain that your body feels, so that when the surgeon cuts you with the knife, the tissues in your body aren't reacting autonomically. MAC monitored anesthesia care, they're not putting a tube down your throat, the ET tube, they're just giving you some drugs and making you unconscious for minor procedures. TIVA, totally intravenous anesthesia care. Some people can't tolerate the sevoflurane. It's not good for them. Sevoflurane inhaled anesthetic agents can cause a condition called malignant hypothermia. And that's like if you took your car and put a brick on the gas pedal with the engine running, the engine would eventually explode. Well, malignant hypothermia does the same thing to your muscle cells, and they just contract and contract and go crazy until you perish. With the onset of malignant hypothermia, you have highly increased CO2 production and temperature, And that's why anesthesiologists are crazy about their capnographs. And if a patient is suspected of having MH, we put these carbon filters on the anesthesia machine circuit to make sure none of the volatile traces get into the circuit. Regional anesthesia, nerve blocks. If you've had a dental procedure and have had Novocaine, that's like a regional anesthesia. They make your jaw go to sleep to do all that dental stuff. Peripheral nerve block, similar kind of thing, different target points for the lidocaine. And central neuraxial blocks, most common thing you'll hear about are the epidurals that the women in labor get, you know, so they don't feel the labor pain. So your agents, sevoflurane, desflurane, isoflurane, again, malignant hypothermia. They measure the effect of anesthesia in a value called MAC, and that's a concentration of the anesthesia agent in your bloodstream, at which a certain percentage of the adult population will be sufficiently anesthetized so that they don't react to the surgeon's knife. And all the time you'll hear surgeons say, is he deep enough? Is he deep enough? He's jumping around, you know. One of the consequences of the inhaled anesthetics is postoperative cognitive dysfunction or dementia, which is one of the reasons they want to limit your exposure to the agents and make things happen fast. So sevoflurane, it's what they use almost all the time. It's the yellow top. It has a vasodilation effect to it. So they don't use it in cardiac surgery. They want to keep your blood pressure up. So that's why they use isoflurane in cardiac mostly, because it doesn't lower the blood pressure nearly so much. DES is another, it's very uncommon, but they use it for bariatric cases and things like that because it permeates the blood-brain barrier quickly. Drugs and more drugs. The anesthesiologists are drug pushers, big time. Everything they do is with drugs. And in the interest of time, so you'll see this. So succinylcholine, that will loosen up the airway so that they can put the tube in. Phenylephrine, that will keep the blood pressure up. Glycopropylate, that will dry up the secretion so they don't have all kinds of guck getting in their tube. Neostigmine, that's a reversal agent for paralytics. So anesthesia allows surgeons to do stuff to you that would normally make you scream and die. So anesthesia is a good thing. So most of you already know that the role of the anesthesiologist. Where I work, the anesthesia MDs work the units. They do all kinds of amazing things. What is an anesthesia biomed? I hope that's why you all came to. So we basically, as the slide says, they just expect us to show up in the room and make all their problems go away when they call. You know, we're like the tooth fairy on steroids or a fairy godmother. But anyways, so a lot of times we just show up and press the right button, like, why is my anesthesia machine alarming? Well, let's press auto set limits 3 times, click your heels together. And so a lot of times we have to do repairs and swap outs and things like that. In the worst case scenario with the vent failure, the whole entire machine keeps functioning except the ventilator motor. And basically, I've done these more than a few times. And we have a spare anesthesia machine that we'll bring into the room that will just ventilate the patient while all the rest of the stuff on the anesthesia machine stays working. And something to think about, an anesthesia machine is a technology truck for the anesthesia MDs. The machine part, they don't always use, but all the stuff that hangs on one of these things makes their practice possible. So here's like one of my most important things. We don't always fix technology, but we always fix clinicians with technology problems. That's what we're here for. Biomeds, I had one, I was at a table in the OR, they were doing a demonstration for Biomed Week. And the doctor says, "Oh, what do you guys really do?" I said, "We're the white blood cells of the hospital." And he goes, "Ah, I get it now." So this is what we do at where I work. We have the bat phone. They call. I say, "I'm in OR 39 and my machine has a leak, or my machine, I have a vent fail, or my Epic doesn't work, my mouse doesn't work, my keyboard doesn't work. You know, why is my monitor beeping?" There's just no end to it. And when you're a biomed for OR anesthesia, you have to have the full IT package, you know, ready to go, you know, because you could go in for a blood pressure cuff, and you know, you can get just about anything. So Epic, you know, how many people are Epic? Yeah, you know where it is, the capsule neuron. The anesthesia techs will call us if things go wrong on the power on self-test. So communication skills, you know, the ladies from the AORN, you know, stated the case beautifully earlier today. But every service call has three really important components. You know, the clinicians, the patient, the technology. You have to work with all three of these things as a system. And when you walk into the OR, you have to be able to read the room. So if you walk in and there's music playing and they're chit-chatting and blah, 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 "Oh, I'm not seeing the vital sign on wall display number 4. You know, that's an easy one. But if you walk into the room and there's all these empty blood bags on the floor, they got the rapid infuser in there, you know, like they've got the anesthesia admin in there alongside everybody else. And it's like, my blood scanner isn't working. My blood scanner isn't working. You know, a barcode scanner, they have to scan the wristband, scan the units, and sometimes it'll just run out of battery in the middle of a big blood S show, you know. You got to get that up for them. So clear communication skills, service to the patient, #1 priority. Solving problems in support of the patient is our #1 job. Like the AORN ladies, we're all there for the patient and their safety. So communication, you walk into a room, and I always do this. I walk in, "Hello, Biomed's here. I heard you had a vent fail, or I heard you had this. I heard your mouse doesn't work. I heard your keyboard's missing a letter." And so I always let them know, because the surgeons are always listening. So if you just walk in and start making all kinds of biomed noise, and the surgeon's wondering what the hell is going on here. So I always like have a little monologue going on with the people in the room as I come in. "Yeah, so I'm Scott from Biomed. I'm gonna fix the anesthesiologist Epic. He's not getting vitals into." So, or I'll say to the anesthesia, "So you're not getting vitals on Epic from the ventilator? Well, that's an easy fix. Let me check a few things." And the surgeons all relax because they know there's nothing going on. The nurses go back to, you know, chit-chatting about, and everybody's happy because they know why you're there. So as you now you're starting to move into the room. So if you have to walk behind someone who's sterile, you always say, "All right, I'm going to step behind you." If you're walking between a table, a sterile table, and a piece of equipment, I'm going to sneak, you grab your coat and you go, "I'm going to sneak by your sterile table here." You want to make sure that the whole surgical team knows that not only why you're there, but they know that you know how to exist in their environment without disturbing their workflow or doing anything that would ruin their day and make them mad at you. Is that all good? Circular communication. So we talked about that a little bit. So our phone that they call in is called the BAT phone, the biomedical assistance telephone. And I'll say, "Oh, so hi, this is Scott from Biomed. Oh, this is OR 33. We have a light drifting. Oh, which light is it? Is it the camera light? No, it's the other light." And I'll say, "Well, where is it drifting from? The shoulder, the elbow, or the wrist?" And the nurse thinks about, "Oh, it's drifting from the elbow." And I go, "Oh, good, I can come and I can fix that." So you're in OR 33 and your surgical light without the camera is drifting at the elbow. No problem, I'll see you in a minute. If she had said it was drifting at the shoulder, that would have meant I had to bring a step ladder to get up to the column. Drifty lights are like one of the things we get every day. So by having that circular communication, I was able to ascertain what the problem was, reassure her that I understood what she needed, and give her some clues to how I was going to help her. This photo in the slide, that's we separated conjoined twins, and there are 2 anesthesia machines in one room, 2 complete sets of pumps. And one of the things I had to do was balance all the power loads to make all that technology work in one room. That's another type of stuff that I just happened to attend a meeting when they were talking about, separating the conjoined twins. And I said to the chief of PD, I go, we're going to have to work really hard to get all that equipment in the room without blowing all the breakers. And he says, oh, good point, good point. Well, I want you in on this. I want you to make sure that happens. That's what you get for paying attention. So everything in the OR is connected. Everything that anesthesiologists do. So the entire surgical team, especially the anesthesia MDs, have a cognitive matrix going on. They're looking at the epic chart. They're looking at the vital signs. They're looking at all their pumps. They're looking at the patient. They're looking at the surgical team. And if something goes wrong, some piece of that puzzle breaks off and falls on the floor, you have to go in and put it back together again to reestablish harmony in their cognitive matrix and make them happy anesthesia MDs. And they get really unhappy if the capsule system stops transmitting data to the epic chart, or the ECG monitor stops sending its sync signal to the defibrillator and the epic ultrasound. So you really, as an anesthesia biomed, you need to know where all the digital bodies are buried. That's the way I say it. And a lot of these things you can fix on the fly in the room, like by rebooting the capsule or reseating a cable. But one of your most valuable tools next to your pocket screwdriver is everybody dressed for work. We have a joke in my shop. If you get caught without your pocket screwdriver, you say, "Are you dressed for work?" Because I buy these on Amazon for like $16 for 8. And I give them out to every new biomed that comes into the department. And I say, now you're dressed for work. Don't let me catch you without it. So doctors, nurses, techs, equipment, a lot of blue stuff. Don't pump against the blue stuff, if you're not used to working in the OR. It really makes them frown. Bloodborne pathogens. The OR is one of the most dangerous work environments you can be in, because you can be exposed to something that could kill you and you wouldn't even know it for months. Or, well, you guys all get the bloodborne pathogens training at work, but it's true. So wherever you work in the OR, always be vigilant. That's one of the things I do all the time. You can get called into the room for one thing, and you can go in with one work order to fill out, and you can hit the jackpot and walk out with 2 or 3 if you pay attention. Blue power boxes. I snapped this picture. I go, how come there isn't a yellow tag on that? How come a repair tag? How come you didn't report it? Well, it was still working. And then fire doors. My old job, I was a hospital safety officer for 19 years, and I can't walk by anything blocking a fire door. And then there's all the stuff that they break and don't tell you about. Like, there's a classic example. Logistics, parts, PM kits, keys to success. Always to do anesthesia service, really have a robust supply of parts. I know it looks like a Draeger machine just blew up into a bunch of blue bins, but I swear it's organized. I really do. So the anesthesia machine, you know, it's nothing to be scared about. It's one of the simplest technologies I think that we have in our realm, and if with a little bit of training, a little bit of understanding, it's really easy to work on. But it's the hardest part is being part of the gang, part of the crew. You know, get to know your anesthesia MDs really well, your nurses. The more they accept you into their realm and become part of their tribe, you know, it makes it so much easier. So become part of the anesthesia tribe by, you know, having hallway conversations with people. Our anesthesia director is a ham radio guy, so it's really easy for me. And so each of the chiefs, we can talk about different hobbies. One of them's a bike guy, and I'm a serious bike guy from way back. So once you develop that rapport with your team, you walk into the room to solve their problem. They're not wondering who you are. You have a good rapport with them, et cetera, et cetera. Now here's a great picture here. This is a Zeiss surgical microscope, and they've got somebody's spine open. And in the bottom of the bag here is one of the eyepieces from the surgical. The entire binocular head came off during surgery. The surgeon put his eyes up against it, and it just fell off and almost hit the patient. And I walked into that, and I said, whoa, you don't see that every day. And I talked the surgeons through like manipulating it through the drape and getting it back in place and setting it down and tightening the thumb screws. That was a lot of fun. Pumps, and more pumps. So during anesthesia, they'll always be running epi. They'll always be running some propofol. They'll always be running some opiates. So getting more into the anesthesia machine. What are we doing here? The Jose Miranda, you know, works with me at Mass General, and he's definitely the master of this machine. So ET tube, the cuff blowing up. How many of you have seen these up close and personal? So if you get a leak in this cuff, you know, the anesthesia MDs will swear there's something wrong with the machine. Oh, it can't be me. You know, I filled that cuff. You know, there's absolutely no chance of it leaking. I go, can we check the cuff, please? And the way to really track that down is you can get right up to where the tube is going in and get your nose really close. And if they're running SIVO, you'll smell it loud and clear. You know, if there's a leak in the tube, or ISO, each of these has their own characteristic smells, and you get to know them. But another test is, like it says here in step 1, you know, turn your flows down. This thing's gonna scream at us. I should have brought an oxygen cylinder, but I thought I'd be safe and not transport pressurized oxygen in my van. I brought air only. So, and if there's a leak, the breathing bag will actually start to collapse. So you'll see the bag. The bag will be nice and inflated. Then as one breath after another comes, the bag will start to get skinnier and skinnier. And that's how you know when you have a leak. But if you do that and the bag just behaves normally for like 10 breaths, you don't have a leak, and it's something going on with the flow cells or the calibration of the flow cells. So random ventilation and airway pressure alarms. I'm gonna start this thing up again. Shut up. It does not like having oxygen. But the so it's making its happy sound for now. Does everybody have a test lung? Well, let's see what happened here. Okay. It's always good to have a test lung. And for those of you who don't have them, have test lungs and test tubes and things like that, these pediatric breathing bags make a great, alternative for a test lung. These red caps you can get from the RT guys. You just go up and scoff some of those. They make great test plugs. These are extension hoses for ventilators. They make great test hoses. So you can build a whole anesthesia toolkit from stuff you can scrounge from the respiratory guys. So auto set limits. If the machine is alarming, I can't tell you how many residents, why is my machine beeping? Why do I have all these red boxes? Auto set limits is your friend. Sometimes from the previous case, the anesthesia MD would have set all kinds of crazy settings in there, and you get the same thing with the resident is going, oh my gosh, my machine's doing all this crazy stuff. And you can do restore defaults. That's always a good, that's always helpful. And then volume autoflow is the mode that I like. And here's a setting that I use all the time. So you set 300 of tidal volume, you set 10 on the frequency, and you turn your I to E ratio down to 1 to 1. And the machine makes a nice square wave. And because you're doing 300 tidal volume times 10, you get a 3 liter minute volume. So that's a big help. It's a nice diagnostic mode for a Biomed because you can see the nice square wave. Come on, you. Auto set limits is my friend. Come on. So there you go. So when we have GE patient monitors, GE brings good things to life, but not mine. And new case setup. A lot of the anesthesia MD's problems are self-inflicted injuries, and it's our job to go there and politely solve them and say, have a nice day. So ECG trace problems, view all, and relearn. Sorry, I'm moving through this so fast. So now I'm going to go to I'm going to pause the slideshow and see if I can get into this. So here's my nod to TechNation. Where's Ben calibrating? See, does my clicker work on that? Oh yeah. So being dressed for work, part of being an anesthesia biomed is having all the stuff you need to be an anesthesia biomed when you walk into the room. So the screwdriver, laser doesn't work on the TV. What's going on here? Where's Biomed? Here we go. This is like one of the most important things you can have for, I can't tell you, all of the monitor cables. I can't tell you how many problems you go into the room for it, and the cable has fallen off the bottom of the vital signs monitor. Always tighten those things down. These little hemostats, those little hex nuts that the cables screw into when they start spinning. I mean, you can use these for a gazillion things. A Sharpie, and I always have one of my repair tags folded up in my pocket because I tell the nurse, I'm sorry, the inline camera is broken. You know, there's no fixing it during the case. And you write the yellow tag out, say inline camera broken, Biomed will fix, you know, after cases today. So every nurse that doesn't go into the room to relieve the previous nurse doesn't call Biomed, my inline camera's not working. She can see that we've been there and we. So other everyday carry items, really essential. This is a metric and standard Allen set for all the monitor brackets and stuff that hang from the ceiling. A little wrench for getting the blue power boxes on and off the IV poles and all kinds of other stuff. Scissors for everything. A temperature thermistor, so you can, temperature probe calls are like, are you kidding me? You know, again. See these little things here? These are trip light power cord shims. That's like one of the best things that ever happened to biomeds. So if you start using them, pretty soon you won't have service calls because the power cords fell out of the back of something or the bottom of the monitor or what have you. This is my Biomed toolkit. This is the big toolkit that I'll take out on different service calls. Again, you've got the test hose. These are flow sensors for the Draeger Apollo because the anesthesiologists get really testy when their gas flows aren't registering. And you can do those in 45 seconds in the room. So you tell the anesthesia MD, so you got a flow cell problem. So can your patient take 45 seconds of apnea? They say, yeah, I pretty much think so. I say, all right, we're going to pre-oxygenate. And then when we're ready, I'm going to have the flow cells out on the tray here ready to go. And we're going to pause the ventilator. Pause the ventilator, unscrew the sensor housings, lift up the breathing system. Sensor housings fall out on the floor. New sensor housings go in. The covers for the sensors go back on. The ventilator, the breathing system goes in five bolts, boom, 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 boom. Slam the tray in, hit start. How did I do? Well, under 45 seconds. That's like one of the common things that we do. Yellow tags, simulator, all the tools. Again, more of these power cord shims, wire ties. You know, having a good Biomed tool bag, essential. Ventilator analyzer and test lung. This is what I call the Apollo crash kit. So when you get a phone call, hi, this is OR 43 and we have a vent fail. I go, so there's a red box on the screen that says ventilator failure. Yes, there is. All right, I'll be there. I grab that kit. I start heading to that OR. I touch my Vocera badge and I say, call Jose Miranda or call Paul Krukis. I say, we got a vent fail in OR 43. I'm on the way with the crash kit. And you have to do the emergency ventilator deal. What's in the crash kit? Diaphragm for the ventilator, test hoses, test lungs, a click adapter. Those things go bad pretty often. This is a flow meter for 1,000 cc's. So a lot of times the anesthesia machine, the Draeger Apollo doesn't like it if there's any phantom flow through the oxygen valve when it's shut off. It messes up the calibration. This is a gauge that measures. See these things? One of the worst leak problems, they'll hit that with their knee or bang something into it and they'll bust the seam open and you'll have a machine leak. It mimics a patient leak and it's hard. So one of the first things I do if we have a persistent leak like that, oops, I will get out the tester and I'll be able to test it. So that really helps. Airway pressure. So doctor, did you check the cuff? Did you check the cuff? Oh, the cuff is fine. I'll say, let's test it with my cuff pressure gauge. And sure enough, one of the calls that really sucked for me was like one of the big, you know, professors who was a major chair of the department. And I'm going, John, you know, it's got to be the cuff leaking because it can't be the machine because we've tested everything. And I'm in there, let's measure the cuff pressure. And he says, well, it can't be the cuff. And then his resident walks in and looks around and and she just goes up and pumps some air into the cuff, and the leak goes away. And he's like looking at me. But anyways, cuff leaks. This is a vital signs display for the GE solar, and this thing went black. I mean, it hard fail, backlight, power supply fail in the middle of complex surgery. And what I did is I routed the vital signs to one of the wall displays with black diamond. I said, I'm going to go get you a new monitor. It's going to be okay. The doctor was freaking out, and then until I routed his vital signs to one of the wall, and I just did a quick swap Rooney in the OR. Bing, bang, boom. Here you go, doctor. He was happy as a clam. Capsule problems. These things really suck, don't they? How many of you guys have them? Oh yeah. The neuro. I don't know. I don't know what the difference is. The neuron 3. And then they have another thing called axons. Those are in a closet and they connect by. But being able to reassign the server, reboot it, are one of the critical things. Sometimes they just drop off the network for no reason other than to piss me off, I think. Who knows? And as you can see, you know, you've got the CareScape, the root, which is the conscious sedation monitor, the anesthesia machine, the Fabius Tero. If the light is blue, it's happy. And if all these things are nice and blue, and you can touch on them and you can see their connection status. But believe me, don't ask me how they do it. The screw up fairy walks in and messes up the cables and does all kinds of stuff. But again, these things, always have a set of these 6-inch needle holders in your pocket. They will save you so many times. The capsule again, you know, monitoring problems. Again, residents more often than not, but even the professors and assistant professors will get in the weeds on the monitor. And I go, did you do a new case setup before you started? Well, no. Well, we're going to have to do that. We're going to have to get everything set up again. And it's really bad in cardiac when they have like 4 lines going. And all right. So that's the conscious sedation monitor. It's called the Root by Masimo, and they monitor the EEG waveforms to see depth of sedation, and that's like a really important thing. And they celebrate a successful surgery and deintubation by taking the cable and then they throw it on the floor and tap dance on it and drive the bed over it. Then the turnover team celebrates their job by sloshing it around with a mop and water, and then the anesthesia techs come in nice and leisurely and they pick it up and they wipe it off and they hang it up, and sometimes it works for the next case, sometimes it doesn't, and that's when we get the Biomed call. Well, that's my 45-minute alarm. So we're doing good. We're ahead of schedule, I think. So these things are kind of crazy. That's the shorting strap for them. So what I do when we have these calls is a lot of times I'll just bring a whole new cable with me to the OR, and I'll have treated all the pins and connectors in the cable with stable in 22, and I'll put some stable in 22 on that test plug and run it in and out of the connector so that when we connect to the disposable on the patient's forehead. So the cable management on the anesthesia machines, this is the thing that takes up a big part of my PMs. You know, you'll go in and you'll I don't know, there must be gnomes or elves or something that goes into the OR at night and just twists all the cables into knots. How does this happen? There's a sky hook assembly. So bringing the services from the wall up and over to the machine. When you're doing the PMs, anything like this, I always tape them because that's the blood scanner on one side and an extender cable going to the anesthesia PC on the other. And if that comes apart during surgery and they can't scan blood products, can't scan bracelets, can't scan drugs, the anesthesiologists don't like that. So a little bit of tape solves that problem. The mouse and keyboard, like one of the most common service calls, you can see, wrap them up. And here's an important thing. If you have your computers on arms, make sure the vent fan, the patient is that way, the back of the room is that way. Don't mount your computer so the air vent is blowing the warm air and any dust bunnies and stuff like that toward the sterile field. I'm sure the AORN would approve. This is the PM. So this is where stupid thing. It's from China. So I'm old school. I use glass flow gauges. I use a Mackeil to measure the pressures. And there I am on the fresh gas port of the Apollo, verifying all the flows. This is my PM cart. TechNation had a PM cart contest in 2017, and I won with that cart. Can you imagine that? A vacuum cleaner from 1982. My laptop. You can see on the front, that's a GE SAM module. Again, I use glass flow tubes to do all my flow checks and calibrations. Two important things. So you jack the nitrous all the way up, and then you crack the O2 open, and you want to see the O2 go up without the nitrous moving until it hits like 200 cc's, and then you'll see the nitrous come on. That's to prevent delivering a hypoxic mixture. You want to have like 200 cc's of oxygen to support life. And it functions at a ratio. When I'm checking the flows, I'm connected up. I'm either using the gas analyzer in the machine, or I'm using my GE SAM module to make sure I get a 25-75 mix. And then I'll go to 1 liter of N2O, 1 liter of oxygen, and I'll want to see a 50-50 mix. Then I'll do a 50-50 of air and O2, and I want to see a 60% mix on there. This is a nice little thing. It's got all the names of all the ports on the VGC or ventilator gas controller, the fresh gas port. Now, if you want to check a ventilator, you can, a vaporizer, you can make yourself a little rig that connects with a Y that connects the fresh gas to the waste port right next to it, and then has a lure T at the top, and you use a sample line to go into the anesthesia machine's gas analyzer, and you can check your vaporizer anesthetic concentrations that way. So another important thing about an anesthesia machine PM is that the machine doesn't leak. Just as a Jedi must build their own lightsabers, an anesthesia biomed must build their own gas test ports. So air, nitrous, oxygen, I come in to do the PM, I disconnect the machine from the wall, put those in, connect the hoses back up, pressurize the anesthesia machine, then isolate it from the wall, and I look to see if my gauges drop. If my gauges don't drop, I have a tight machine. If I suspect a problem in the hose, this thing has 2 sets of ports on it, so I can loop the hose into it, pressurize it, and see if my hose has a leak in it. When I'm checking my gas alarms and stuff like that, I can isolate the gas system from, isolate the anesthesia machine from the wall, and then I can bleed off the gas in the line, and I can see the pressures drop. And then when the pressures drop to certain levels, I can see my alarms trigger for low gas alarms. Those are like one of the best things you need to build for doing this job. So RPTs, big part of my life. It's very sad. And if you have these blue power boxes, always have this wood head tester. So that's, I can't, because the worst thing, you go in the OR and you see all the plugs falling out of them for the IV pumps and everything else. And these, it's because the receptacle tension fails. The pictures are a little out of order. This is my checklist for doing the anesthesia machine PM. And I use this checklist every single time, even though I've been doing this for 14 years, I never do a machine without having this checklist. And I start, you know, the first two are just something, I always make sure that the data ports are set correctly. My software revision, there's my control number, OR67 91024. Medical gas hoses neatly dressed off the floor, no leaks. Cat5 USB cables neatly dressed, correctly plugged in. CPU, monitor arm, hardware tight, solar brackets tight. There's nothing worse than having the whole computer arm fall off the machine on the floor during surgery. And it's not on the Draeger PM checklist to check all that stuff, but if one of those things falls off, it's a world of bad news for you, I'll tell you that. We've had that happen. PDM, tram rackets tight, video cable screws all tight. There's where your little screwdriver comes in. Power cord shims. Those, like I said, I wish I should have had one, but that's when those things are your best friend. So phantom flow, you want to make sure that at our place, the machines have 1 million miles on them. Some of them have been running since 2005, and the O2 valves get all scratchy and yucky, and the O2 will leak by them, and you'll have like a few hundred cc's of leakage, and that will screw up the self-calibration of the Draeger Apollo. So before you do any PM on this thing, always look for your 200. Make sure that you have no phantom flow coming out of the fresh gas port. So then the next thing I check is the gas analyzer. I'll run the calibrations. Can this thing go in service mode? Oh no, it's locked. Some Apollos, the service mode is locked out, and you have to use a service software to open the service mode. If you do, excuse me, if you do a software upgrade, that's the time and the only time you can check a box to not require use of the service laptop. So we only figured that out halfway between doing the 4.53 software upgrade on 60-something machines. So half our machines, you know, you can just press the magic keys and service mode pops up. If you buy these machines, definitely order them with the service mode unlocked, because if your laptop, if your subscription to Draeger Service Connect expires and you don't know it, and you're in the OR at like 7 o'clock setting up to do a machine PM, and then you go to use your service software and it's 9 o'clock, you're screwed. You know, Draeger tech support ain't gonna help you at that point, and you can't get into service mode. So going on with the PM checklist. So after you check the gas bench, you have take the breathing system apart. How are we doing? We're doing here 340. So breathing system comes apart. Boom, 5. Draeger key, breathing system, plate. It should be nice and toasty warm to the touch, because that's what keeps humidity from building up. And you clean that really well with an alcohol pad. There's a couple of tests that you do called the PEEP offset in there that you do with a low pressure meter. Put it all back together again. So the then you do your pressure gauge. So you've got your pressure cal, your flow cells, your PEEP offset. Those are pages in the service menu. Pressure gauge, accurate and linear. So I use a magnehelic gauge for that. I take the breathing bag off, put the magnetic gauge right on there. And, you know, I like it because it's big and the numbers are big on it. My eyes like big numbers because I'm of that age. And you can pressurize the anesthesia machine and you'll see the, oh look, the O2 flush button doesn't work because I only have an air cylinder on. So, hope we went back to the, so moving on, they have a test called the post-test, VGC post-test, that tests the ventilator performance. And at that point, you're done. Then you go into the other stuff, making sure you have a good transformer for the Epic PC, making sure the Epic PC is okay, because it's not part of the anesthesia machine PM, but if the Epic PC is not happy, the doctors aren't happy. We all have isolation transformers to plug all the stuff into because the anesthesia machine is a technology truck and they're festooned with everything. You guys have all seen that. And because of leakage current, you have to have a transformer. So you always have to make sure you do the PM on the transformer and check that off, or your supervisor will say, Scott, you did that anesthesia PM, but I see the work order open for the transformer, for the GE monitor, for this, for that. How come you didn't do those? Well, I have a checklist to make sure I don't get that song and dance. The nerve stimulator, that's a whole topic unto itself, but you make sure that that's working correctly. AIV power mates, Woodhead test. Number of PM stickers applied. If I had 4 open PMs, boom, I write 4, check, check, check. Make sure I collected my tools. That's the PM checklist. Anyone have any questions on the checklist? Anyone read the checklist manifesto? Why hospitals should fly by Atul Gawande. So again, my PM card. This is my English translation of the German English Draeger service procedure for the Apollo. I did them so many times. I'm like, are you guys kidding me? You know, look at this. I mean, my eyes can't see that. And it's like so crazy. They tell you to take the same thing apart 3 or 4 times by the time you get to the end. So over years of doing it, I've kept updating my PM procedure, and I keep it right there on the cart. So, because I'll get called out of the room for a cardiac problem or something, and I have to go back and pick up where I left off, and I have my checklist and I have my PM procedure. Again, Woodheads. If you're doing PMs on the RPTs, so what I should have said, I do the whole anesthesia zone as part of the anesthesia machine PM, because you're in the room, and it's not just an anesthesia machine, it's everything that makes the anesthesiologist happy when they work. Again, stable in 22. A lot of times I'll find my flow cells noisy and a little bit of stable in 22 in the sockets. Flow cells zero out and don't make any noise at all. I can't tell you how many things I fixed with that in the OR. Telemetry transmitters, Doppler boxes that are noisy. It's just, so for me, what I'll tell you is, if you're a biomed that doesn't have stable in 22 in your toolkit, you're like a surgeon that doesn't have anesthesia and an anesthesiologist. It's that much of a game changer. STABILANT.com. I don't get paid to say that. I just want to give you guys it's like the most amazing stuff. I always check their suction, because wall suction is really important to the anesthesia MDs. And I'm not just there to do a checkbox, to fill off a checkbox on my compliance that I did the anesthesia machine PM. I'm there to make sure everything that makes the anesthesia MD happy is taken care of. No problems during the cases. You don't want to break their cognitive matrix. I I test the nerve stimulators that the MDs use with my Fluke Sigma pace because it's the perfect thing. You put it on 1,000 ohm pulse output, and it quantifies that your stimulators are working right. I use it for everything, for intraoperative neural monitoring. And this is a simulator kit that I built to check the Masimo root. I just took a sensor, attached it to a piece of ANZAC. I put stainless steel screws through it. I took some ECG leads and I crimped on some ring terminals, and I can connect that to my simulator. I can connect the other end up to the root, and now you see the nice, beautiful 1 Hz sine wave up there. You know, like I said, Jedi builds their lightsaber, Biomed builds their test gear. That's a flow cell. You know, sorry, the pictures are a little out of order. That's the new GE gas analyzer. So this is the rig that I use when I go to Martha's Vineyard and do the machines down there. I just have this up there so it would give you an idea how to set up an anesthesia PM cart. You know, so you got your tools, all your gear. You can wheel in next to the machine. These are some test stuff that I built. Anyone have an air seal? Comment, those things suck, don't they? So you take this, you take an anesthesia breathing bag, you get four ends off the anesthesia circuits, and then you take one of those big trocars and you ram it in there, and then you put your breathing bag on there, and you have like a test rig for an air seal. It works. Again, so these are the shims that I talk about. Every machine that I work on, every piece of equipment on the anesthesia technology truck has one of those things on it. Because the worst thing, when we do PMs, we're doing stuff to the anesthesia machine, the anesthesia truck, so it doesn't break down in the middle of a case. And those things hold those cords in so that no matter how violent the anesthesiologist moves those arms and tugs on stuff, they're not pulling their power cords out. That's what it looks like when it's plugged in. Triplite makes those. There's my cart. There's the Mackeil PM, all the stuff, the service laptop. Again, so when you're doing one of the major PMs, the 3 years, the 6 years, anyone that you have to break open a PM kit, you know, I stage like that. I bring the side tables in, put some blue cloths on them, break open the PM kits and lay it all out. And if you can see, all my tools that I use are laid out in order on the top of the cart. I know we're getting tight on time. Drugs, and more drugs. Pumps, you know, you got to be a pump master. So let's talk about questions. I know I did a lot of stuff and we're running over time, but let's open the floor up. Who wants to know? What do you want to say? What do you got for questions? Larry, you look like you have a question. Yeah. Come on, guys. What do you got?
I would like to know how you made that set line box, but I'll get your information after.
Yep. Yeah, it was easy. No, but I basically just built all the stuff.
So I do notice that you take your car and all your equipment to the operating room and do the PM in the operating room?
Yes. So the other two guys that do this don't do that. They disconnect the machine, they bring it to the Biomed shop, and they frig around with it for a few days, and they bring in another anesthesia machine and swap it out, and sometimes they miss connecting a few cables back. To me, I mean, I learned from Sandy Townsend from Bay State Anesthesia. You know, that was his example. He was like the greatest that ever lived. And that's what he would do. He would come in, he would set up his gear right next to the machine. He would lay out all his parts on the tables. He would have his checklists and everything, because I'm not there to PM an anesthesia machine and check off a box on my compliance list. I'm there to PM the machine and the anesthesia zone around it and everything that makes that functional for the anesthesia MD and make sure, you know what I'm saying? Does that make more sense than, oh, I just have to check off my compliance box that I PM this anesthesia machine? What else? Triplite, TRIPP-LITE. And it's just called a power cord shim. And those go really good on the power cord that goes in the base of the OR table, so they can't kick that out. And it also helps keep fluid from getting in and shutting off the LIM alarms. So come on, let's keep it coming, folks. What do we think? Anything? Yeah, GE, well, the principles are all the same, you know. One's a calico cat and one's a tabby cat, you know, they all meow the same way. Yes, sir. What? So you mean electronically controlled ventilation?
Yeah, so like some of the GE machines, the ones that I have at my facility are not mechanical drive. They're all controlled by electronic surveys.
Yes.
Have you touched those?
Yes. So our sister hospital across town, the Brigham, they're our GE house. And, you know, it's just a different way of skinning the same cat. But the one thing I will say, this machine can lose all electrical power and still deliver anesthesia, as long as the MD can use the Armstrong ventilator. But with the GE machine, when power goes away, you're like dead in the water. Does it? Yeah. So I don't know that much about GE. I come from a Draeger house, but I respect the GE brand. You know, they're the other guys. Honda and Toyota. I'm a Honda guy.
All right, we're going to wrap it up. We have another class that night to come in. Thank you so much.
All right, John. Thank you so much.